Hello, everybody. My name is Kieran. I'm hosting things and kicking us off today. Just give me 2 minutes while we allow our different attendees to join. There's Philippe. Hi, Philippe. I'm just adding Anton and Howard now. There's Anton. And I just need Luis. Hey, Anton.
Hey guys, good to see you.
Hey, Howard.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Super.
And apologies now, Philippe, you don't happen to know if Luis is on the call yet?
He's not on the call yet. I think he still has to fetch some chickens, but he said he will be there very shortly.
Catching chickens is particularly important this time of year. So yeah, when we see him joining, I'll let him in here. So folks, welcome everybody to our attendees as you're joining there. This is our second webinar with Philippe in the recent past. And today the topic is Voices from the Field, farmers transitioning to regenerative agriculture and their experiences. It's fantastic to have so many people here. So grab your coffee, open your ears and your minds. I will do a couple of housekeeping rules just before we start and I introduce the guys. So our chat will be enabled shortly. If you'd like to include any comments or let us know where you're joining from and why you're here today, please do that in the chat. If you have any questions for the gentleman on the call, please pop them into the Q&A and we will address those sort of for the final 20 minutes or so of the session today. For those new to the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform, a little bit about that. It is a marketplace, a networking platform, and a hive mind for professionals working in the area of nature-based solutions and the delivery of that. The marketplace is primarily for nature-based enterprises. So if you are joining us today and you do work for a nature-based enterprise, feel free to list your business there. Without much further ado, I'll come back in at the very end of this just with a few words about the platform. But today's webinar, as I mentioned, it's hosted by Philippe Birker, our ambassador for the Regenerative Agriculture Community of Practice on the platform. Philippe was recently invited to speak at the EU Parliament about regenerative farming, and I believe brought some regenerative farmers along with him. He can tell us about that in his own time. And Philippe is currently wintering at his farm in Portugal, I believe. Is that right, Philippe? And he has invited 3 other farmers along today to share their experiences about transitioning to regenerative farming. So we have Anton from the Ukraine, we have Luis in Spain, who is just joining us shortly, and Howard from the Netherlands. So without taking up much more time, let me introduce Philippe. Over to you.
All right, pleasure to be here. Yeah, I'm really happy to be having this session today. I think one of the things in regenerative agriculture that is always buggering me that there's so much conversations happening about farming, but way too little with farmers. So I'm very happy to have here 3 gentlemen sharing their own journeys from 3 very different contexts. And I think it will be giving some great insights into the people listening. And also looking forward to hear a little bit more myself about all of the different journeys. And at the beginning, I mean, Luis is still joining us. As you might know or might not know, farming context can always be a little bit unpredictable. So he's still solving some last things on the farm, but will be joining us shortly. So to kick off, I will ask each of them to basically just give a little introduction into their own regenerative journey, how they got into the topic, also what their own challenges were along the way, because let's face it, with all the hype around regenerative agriculture, there's a lot of obstacles to be overcome, and also maybe what kept them going and why they're still on this path. Next, and then we will open the space for questions from the audience. So I would say maybe Howard, do you wanna kick us off and take us on a little journey into regenerative agriculture realities in the Netherlands?
Thank you, Philip, and thank you for everyone for being here and wanting to hear our story. Yeah, Philip. Basically, in the preparation, you told us we have 5 minutes to talk about this, and what you just said is quite a lengthy amount to fit in 5 minutes. So I'm going to try and keep it to the bare essentials, and then anything that pops up later, we can go over that in the Q&A part. Yeah, Howard Koster from the Netherlands, 40 years old, nearly 41. Background, hotel management, officer in the Dutch Army. And in 2017, I realized that I was explaining to more and more people what we were doing while I was agreeing with it less and less in the army. So I figured I should quit immediately and discover my ideals. And then very importantly, find something that was small enough in line with those ideals that the energy that I put in, that I would also really see tangible results. So after traveling some in South America, North America, thinking about maybe protecting nature, realizing that our food system destroys nature and we're going to be 10 million people, billion people who all want to eat, I came on the idea that I would like to learn more about nature-inclusive farming and how to use the strengths and symbiosis of nature to actually produce food. Well, I had to come from a very, very far distance because I didn't realize that stuff already exists in the form of regenerative agriculture, organic agriculture, agroecology. So after a bit of reading and woofing on a farm in California, that brought me back to the Netherlands, to Wageningen University, where I followed a master in organic agriculture. That was from 2019 to 2021. And during this time, I was shouting to anybody who wanted to hear it that I wanted to become a farmer. And of course, getting a master at a university is not the direct way to become a farmer, of course. But I was very interested also in the scientific background of soil life and how to treat soils and how to use these strengths of nature in food production. I felt like getting a bit of in-depth knowledge, while at the same time spending as much of my free time that I had getting practical experience would get me in the right direction, and I'd learn the rest while doing it. So yeah, basically at the university, I realized that there's so much knowledge about sustainable farming practices already, and often it doesn't reach the ground level. There's an implementation gap. Got interested in that, so after I finished studying, I carried on working for Wageningen University for the soil biology department, started looking for land, basically anywhere in Northwest Europe. And in the end, we teamed up with a grassroots organization in the Netherlands called Land van Ons, which means Our Land. It's a citizen organization that uses citizen money and membership money to buy land and then lease it to farmers below the market price in order for them to be able to extensify and increase biodiversity in the rural areas. So working together with them, we now, since last year, February, we leased 25 hectares of land in the east of the Netherlands, including a house. It is part of a former conventional dairy farm, so we had a lot of perennial ryegrass. And we've now, this year, really started implementing various different agroforestry systems. We have a CSA market garden. We're giving 10% back to nature. And yeah, and we try to do this in a as interactive way with the public as possible. So we don't only want to grow healthy food in a sustainable way for the local market, but we want to invite people onto our farm and explain to them why it's important and why they should be spending a little bit more of their income on healthy food. Yeah, challenges still, of course. Money is always a challenge. I think every farmer, especially as a starting farmer, everything costs money, and we're going from a high input, high output system where the plant is being fed. We're starting to feed the soil, but the soil life still needs to get going. So we see the yields go down in the first few years. We can't sell our products organically yet because it takes 2 years to get organically certified and then get the value adding from that. Yeah, cost of machinery, cost of fuel, cost of labor. So those things are very big challenges. Luckily, we have Land van Ons in the background to support us in that. So the first 5 years, we don't pay any lease for the land, which allows us to really get a breath and get our system going the way we want it to get going without immediately having to have a turnover. But nevertheless, the last 2 years, my only income has been from 2 days of work, soil biology, Wageningen University, and at the farm, we just pump everything back into our soils. That in a nutshell, Philippe.
Amazing. I think, especially with this audience, it would be great if you can say a few more sentences about Land van Ons, because I think it's an amazing initiative that would be great to replicate actually in other European countries.
Yeah, Land van Ons. It's basically founded by two people about 4 years ago, and they were always interested in biodiversity and looking at little plants in the fields, and they just saw their surroundings turn into a green desert, and they first started thinking, why doesn't the government do anything? And then their answer that they came up was because the government has no vision. It's all about 4-year politics and being re-elected, and this needs long-term vision. Then they thought, why are the farmers not doing anything? And the answer that they had there was because the farmers have a lack of knowledge and a lack of financing or financial space. So then they said, why are we not doing anything? And they didn't find a good answer for that, so they started doing something. And within 4 years, they've now managed to get 26,000 members, and every single member is an investor in square meters of soil. So at the moment, they have over 300 hectares of land, which still makes them a very small player in the agricultural scene in the Netherlands. But they make quite a lot of noise, and land is very expensive. So our farm, for example, including the house, it costs 2.5 million euros. Now I can't even imagine being able to raise that amount of money going to the bank. Our business plan shows that in 5 years' time, we hopefully can pay ourselves a sustainable income. But there's no return on investment, and there's no way that we could pay the interest on 2.5 million euros if we had to finance that, let alone that the bank would even think about lending it to us. So these initiatives, they're really essential in gaining financing for access to land. And yeah, we feel very supported by them.
Definitely. I think it's an amazing initiative. Hope some people here get inspired from that. I can also double down on what Howard has been saying before. Like for me, when I started diving into regenerative agriculture in 2017, 2018, I found papers from Wageningen from the 80s and 90s already, speaking about carbon sequestration and biodiversity increase through regenerative agriculture practices. So essentially, academic institutions like Wageningen have been knowing this for a long time. And I've always been wondering how it's possible that we scientifically know this, but yet it took us so long and we're still so far from implementing the scientific knowledge on the practice. So I think there's something very interesting thing going on there on your farm, Howard, and we will return back to that one later. But now we travel a lot further east and we're going a lot bigger in size because Anton has a slightly different context with a slightly bigger farm than Howard. Anton, floor is yours. Let us tell us about your story. You're still on mute.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here to tell you my story. Yeah, it's slightly different and a bit unique for Ukraine because I'm from Ukraine. I'm managing a farm over 7 years and I'm only 35 years old. And my farm is 5,000 hectares. So it's rather big territories, but for Ukraine, it's just normal. It's it's just an average farm. Basically, I produce commodities: wheat, corn, sunflower, rapeseeds. A lot of machinery, a lot of issues, but very low margin. And For my first years in farming, they were very successful, very low expenses, very good yields. And I was thinking that I'm very lucky and I'm very smart for to start my business very in a good with a good results. But lately, around maybe 3 years ago, something happened. Not enough rainfall, extreme sun heat, extreme wind in winter, no ice and snow coverage of the soil with extreme winds. You may know my farm is southern part of Ukraine in Odessa region. And actually, it's a beginning of the Great Steppe, which begins in Odessa region and ends somewhere in Mongolia. So it's called Great Steppe. So Odessa is beginning of that steppe. And results was were very awful. I lost a lot of money and maybe as well my confidence that I'm a good agronomist. So I started to looking what I can do, and mainly my idea was to find a way to reduce costs, not to spend much money, but still receive an adequate amount of yields, not receive a lot, but still having some margin, adequate margin. So what we did, firstly, we refused to do plowing, no soil rotation, and it helped us a lot. And when we started that, we find that there is a lot of some additional things to know about when you on a transition from conventional to regenerative. I can't say that I'm totally regenerative. No, because I'm mixing a lot of different techniques, and you may understand that the area is very big, and I need to sometimes take very hard decisions what to do to be economically efficient. But step by step, I'm making and transferring more and more hectares into regenerative agriculture. And mainly one of the biggest issues was what is exactly regenerative agriculture, what I can do, what is a theory about it. But just recently I was watching a speech of my also Ukrainian friend. She's a CEO of company called Regrow from United States, and she was saying that actually her mother was doing kind of regenerative agriculture in their summer house. So mainly actually it can be called like come back to the basics, because all this stuff was known for ages. And actually, my grandmother is still doing that in her summer house with her small land plot, producing tomatoes and onions for us. So it's mainly a source of enthusiasm about how we can apply. And the challenge is how to spread this very science intensive and really hard techniques for large areas, because it's hard to have all necessary machinery for do it on a big scale. So step by step, I'm doing that, and I must mention that I do not have any livestock farms around me, so I can't use any manure from there. I can only, and actually that business is not very interesting now in Ukraine, especially in a steppe area, because winter is cold and the summer is very hot. So all the only sheep can survive in that kind of weather. And I'm seeking for new technologies, new approaches with bacteria, with biotechnologies, how to make my soil more sustainable. And I'm using the word resilient to anything can happen in our area. So it keeps me all the time in shape.
Amazing. Thanks for that intro, Anton. And I mean, I will return to Anton later on again. And I think one very peculiar situation there is as well going on around the fact that Ukraine is outside of the common agricultural policy and also has a very unique situation going on at the moment. So, but before we go there, let's hear a little bit from Luis and travel a few thousand kilometers to the southwest, to the other end of Europe, and hear how pasture grazing with chickens is happening in the center of Spain and what the challenges there are.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me for this information. Let me say only two things. I'm also 40 years old, so it's a very good year for the regenerative. And Tom, producing cereals using regenerative techniques, I think is the most difficult aspect of the regenerative agriculture. I have visited many land with fruits, with vegetables, but cereals, in Spain we produce a lot. Is very, very difficult, and there's many different aspects. So good luck in that. I have my own pasture poultry farm, and also we produce grass beef. We have about 120 cows. No cows. We have only male, because you speak about the European policy. The veterinary from Spain that also with European laws avoid me to have together my ox and my cows, because it's absolutely dangerous and incredible. No, you cannot have together pasture in the same area, cows and ox. Why? No, because they have not a healthy healthy management, similar health management. Okay, I do the more difficult one, is the cows one. Say no. You cannot mix your ox and your cows. So I had to obtain another farm code in another area. And I decide to separate my male and female animals. But Philippe, can you share your experience with with the administration? I say I can write a book because the first time I go to an official vet to explain them that I'm going to move the chicken tractor to a different area, say no, wait, you cannot move the area. This is all the need that you have to obtain if you want to obtain these farmers. Imagine they have only the idea of the intensive farm. So, for example, you have a 1.80 m fence to avoid animal from the external lands go inside to your farm. Say, the problem that I have is that the wild animal live together with my chicken. My chicken eat snakes, eat mouse, they live all together. No. But you need this fence. You say, okay, but you know that the wild pigs, the fox, they are already in. Say, okay, we don't care about that. You need that fence. Okay, so yes, but finally. 1 year later, we obtained the permission, but it's continued the relationship with them. We started our own farm 5 years ago, but I have 10 years of experience. We sell all of our product directly to the consumer. I'm happy to share the new experience that we are going to sell the first whole cow to Austria the next week, because there is the market is there is a lot of interest from many different places to buy regenerative meat. So I am very happy for that. The problem is that the government and the lawyer and also the vet, the official vets, don't have the tools to check or to think about regenerative measure. For example, you know that we cannot put together our chicken, our cows. And we know that is the best way to manage the pasture, moving first the cows and after that moving the chicken. No, you are not allowed, because if you have a farm for produce meat, this area is only for one species. You cannot introduce two. So we need to keep doing more science with the uni. I think we have to put the university to study with us to prove that there is no anything bad or worse for the consumers, and to open the views with absolutely scientific knowledge that we can move different species. We can do we can move the house for the chicken, the chicken tractor. All of this is we need what? We need the knowledge, and that is another aspect that I'm not sure if Howard told that, is that the knowledge is very, very expensive, or also the experience is very expensive. I don't know how much money have you spent in your farm testing or doing different things, but I spent thousands of euros that I'm going to lose directly only checking what is the best kind of chicken or the best kind of cow for producing that way. So also the machines, also the tools, but the knowledge, the experience is absolutely incredibly expensive. So yeah.
I think that's a perfect intro. And already right away, I know there's a lot of people from the Climate Farmers team that would love to get their hands on your regenerative meat. And I'm sure there's also some people here in the chat. So maybe you can put some information in the chat. And at the same time, I think knowledge is definitely one of the key points that we also identified in order to scale regenerative agriculture. And maybe Howard can tell us a little bit more here about the collaboration that you are doing with Wageningen University and what you are thinking generally, how farmers can collaborate with academic institutions and research institutions in a way that actually helps and supports the farmers and is not another burden on top of their workload.
Yeah, that last thing is also very important. I'll get to that in a second. Yeah. So first of all, from me realizing about this implementation gap, I also started thinking, well, maybe I can become some kind of scientist farmer and keep one leg in Wageningen University and one leg on the farm. And well, that worked. Currently, I work still 2 days a week for the soil biology department, and the rest of the time on the farm. We also have a 1-year-old child, so I do notice that my time is kind of stretched a bit thin in doing this, and there's quite a lot of demand for this niche that I'm now in. But it is very rewarding, because on the one side of Wageningen University, it's really, really good to be able to represent the practical side and ask critical questions at the scientific side, like why, for example, compost tea. A lot of farmers in my region who are interested in agroforestry, they're also very interested in compost tea, and they're already applying it for different reasons. On the one side, to get the Brix value in their leaves, so the sugar value in their leaves up. On the other side, to stimulate the soil life in inoculant ways. And science sort of laughs at this and goes, poo, 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 compost tea. And I say, why? Has it been disproven? No, we don't know anything about it. So I say, okay, but if all the farmers are already doing it, and then you can't just laugh at it. It means that you should be doing research into this. So in that way, I'm trying to take the practices that are already happening towards a scientific level and say, okay, let's start proving these or disproving them. And on the other side, I also try to get the knowledge which is already there, get that to a farmer level. And so for Wageningen University, what I basically do, I'm not a scientist. I don't have a PhD or anything like that. But what I can do is I have access to the science, so I can actually form this bridge and try and connect these two worlds together. So I do stakeholder engagement. I take the knowledge and I find the relevant parties in society, and I connect them with the science and see what comes out of it. And that's really cool. And on the farmer side, yeah, we started with 25 hectares of perennial ryegrass, and we're implementing various different kinds of agroforestry systems, from a food forest to alley cropping. We want to integrate animals in one part. In Holland, we also have all these crazy legislation, which is really our legislation in the last 70 years has been developed for intensive agriculture, and the problems that intensive agriculture brings with it, which is why all these animals have to be segregated. You can't do this, you can't do that. And now showing that these practices, these regenerative practices make sense and have a scientific base that can also be used, the scientific evidence can be used to influence policy and actually get new regulations specifically for the type of agriculture that we want to move towards. So in that sense, it's really important to also be able to prove stuff, and therefore we did a lot of base measurements before we started. So what's happening on the farm when we actually took over the farm, and where are we moving towards now? So we have a lot of soil biology measurements, of course, also a lot of carbon, so organic matter. But then also because we have our Land van Ons as owner, they are also interested in seeing, okay, does our approach actually lead to the results that we want, increase of biodiversity? So we have a lot of citizen science going on the farm as well. We have very eager and very knowledgeable, often retired biologists, ecologists, soil scientists, doing all kinds of measurements. They come and dig up earthworms twice a year. They measure butterflies. They measure all kinds of other pollinators. We have landscape photography going on, that they take a set coordinate, and with drones that they take 4 times a year, they take photos from the same place to actually measure landscape biodiversity. And all of this is just essential to get the word out and to prove certain things. And one thing that I do see is still what's so hard is that science really wants to exclude all other variables. So they a laboratory experiment is perfect because you can have everything the same and just tweak one thing. And when I invite even my colleagues from soil biology to come and do experiments on the farm, they say, okay, but if you're doing this on 8 hectares there, then you have to keep those 8 hectares without trees, but exactly the same crop rotation and exactly the same manure. You only have to drive there on the same moments. And I'll tell them that's just not reality, guys. That's not going to happen. You have to come and measure it in real life, and maybe your paper will be less publishable because you have not got all the scientific stuff right, but at least we'll be able to see what works in practice, and sort of finding this sort of crossover science in which we say, okay, we've got some certain experiments with a scientific value, but we're taking them into real life and we're seeing if it works on the farms in different situations. I think that's essential to get regenerative agriculture as sort of a proven way towards sustainable future.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think I can relate very much with that. I think one of my favorite sentences from one of our farmers was, regenerative agriculture is like dancing with complexity. And I think that sums it up perfectly, right? Like nature is complex and you can't put it down in very simple brackets. And unfortunately, that's very often what the scientific community wants to do, which I think why it's so important to have people like you who are bridging both of those worlds. And I'm looking forward to see what more research is going to be done there and what's going to come out of this.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Anton, I mean, I already mentioned it. You have a very specific context because in the European Union, which is the context where we are operating, we have the Common Agricultural Policy. And this is for most farmers, the majority of their income. In the Ukraine, you don't have this. And I think that's still a crazy situation. If I imagine most farmers that I know in Europe, and I tell them your subsidies are gone tomorrow, they'll be like, okay, I'm closing, right? Like, this is just not possible. So how are you dealing with that situation? And I think probably a question that's on the mind of a lot of people right now as well is, how is the war affecting the situation? And how is that affecting your farming practices at the moment?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And just recent news that EU Commission said that Ukraine is on the way to join European Union. So guys, we are we are waiting for European funding policies in Ukraine, but it can take time, like 5-10 years. But however, what I have to say about Ukrainian agriculture and basically economics of agriculture in Ukraine, that costs of everything is rather low. Yeah, I mean, like labor, land, energy, but the most expensive part is technology. So machinery is expensive, fertilizers are expensive, seeds, and maybe some special equipment. Oh, everything is imported, so we very depend on imports of everything which we need for more and more advanced technological agriculture. And that was our advantage on foreign markets. Our main trade partners where we sell our sunflower wheat was Egypt for wheat, Pakistan and India for sunflower, and for sunflower oil. So that was a business to produce with a very low costs and sell it as a commodity, as a bulk, with a low margin, but with a very big amount of it to receive enough money to pay for a new John Deere. So we took money from India and paid to John Deere, mainly that way. But situation is changing, and I can say that war is a point where we all understand that the idea of low costs will not work anymore in that world. Everything will be more and more expensive, and if we will still produce our medium quality commodities with a rising expensive, we will come to zero, and we will need to close that business. And now what we experiencing that we can't sell our commodities because there is no option to ship from Odessa port, from Ukrainian ports at all. Something can be, but it's just like a 5% of what we were doing usually. So then I decided to maybe I can earn some additional income doing my regenerative practices, receiving voluntary carbon certificates for my actions. And that was the first year I received payments for my practices. And it feels like it payoffs my work for just containing and maintaining staff as it was for a long. It's kind of conservation. And I'm considering how I can change my strategy in future, well, because war will end someday, and will I come back to conventional practices? And maybe I'm saying no. I will go deeper to conservation. I will go deeper to regenerative practices and producing wheats and sunflower cereals with more value added. Maybe I will start this year trying to put organic certification to my products, and that will take time for some. But I think it most reasonable investments I can do right now, because I can only dream about selling wheats and sunflower to India and to Egypt. It's impossible now, and it can be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And I must say that, yeah, all agricultural business businesses are struggling now with a lot of issues caused by war. But still, I'm sure that Ukrainian agriculture industry is powerful, and it is a big room for development and for advancements, investments as well. So I feel that it's very important to be in a pioneering of that advancements, and regenerative agriculture is for sure is on the frontier of that challenges and issues we need to do, trying to be more and more near to European Union.
For sure. Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing, Anton. And I mean, I really feel with you, right? I know how much farmers in Europe are often struggling already, but then in your context, that's definitely a very tough one to pull through. And I think we're all hoping that that will clear out soon. Jose, I think what we missed before was a little bit the intro. How did you actually start your regenerative journey? And also, how did you end up doing pastured poultry, which is a niche within the niche of regenerative agriculture? And then maybe to close it off, because I know that in your specific niche, there is a lot of regulatory issues also on behalf of other pastured poultry farmers in Europe. What is the one legislation thing that you would love to change in Europe?
Okay, many different questions. The first one question to Anton is that I do not receive any money from the European Union to my farm, also because poultry have not received any money, and also mostly of my cows, they are male ox, so they don't receive also publicity money. So I have the only entry that I have is my sales. So imagine how difficult it is to E+D in your farm. If you change the feed of your chicken, if you change anything, affect directly to the unique income that you have in your farm is the sales. So for that, I explained in the beginning that the knowledge and the experience is so expensive, also frustrated, and it's quite hard for the beginning, because I have no family with a lot of money, so I have no money from my family to say, okay, spend your family money. No, I have not. So yeah, how I started, just because I studied veterinary in the university, specific in equine orthopedic problem, and I worked for my whole work life with in the field with sport horses. I started when I started to work in a farm, a horse farm with 200 horses here, and I am the manager. And in veterinary, we don't study anything about, not even regenerative, nothing even extensive, nothing. I think it's 2 hours in the whole university study about extensive production. So I started to study to check on different ways, because they produce they produce in our 180 hectares only with one kind of cereals. The production were very low, so I started to study alternative for that. And the best for us was the multi-species pasture. And before that, someone explained me, have you hear something about Joel Salatin or something like that about the management, the animal altogether? Say, no. Say, okay, why don't you check that? And it was very, very interesting for us. I also, during my veterinary study, I was quite worried about the way that we manage the animal that we eat, because we want very cheap meat, but the payment for that, have the animal have to pay for that, living in a very, very bad condition. And also we are in Europe, that is the best place in the world for the animal intensive farmer. But for example, in the case of the chicken in Europe, we are able to keep from 18 to 20 chicken per square meter during all their lives. So I am quite worried about the way that we care the animal that we eat. So I had no children in that moment. Now I have 3, so I have no more time to study. But in that moment, yes, and I started to studied regenerative agriculture. And why I started with chicken, because it's the most consumer meat for everyone. So it's the most sorry for my own horrible English. Is the meat that has been consumed in bigger amount in Europe. The period of care is very short. It's only in 3 months. You have the first income. So if you don't have a lot of money to start, it's nice to have a quick return for money. And I thought it was easier than the cows. 4 years later, I know that the cows is easier for a chicken because they are much complicated to manage, to feed them, to care them. But yeah, I started with chicken, and I saw from the beginning that the consumer, all of us have very difficult lives. We have a lot of issues day by day. So the consumer want to buy their meat in a very easier way. And if we mix in the same website, beef, chicken, also here in Spain, Iberian pork, also a dairy product that we have now in our website. This is one of the most interesting things for our consumer. So, and if you, when you are starting to contract new employer, you cannot have only 2 employers because some of them is in free time or holiday side. So you at least need 3. So if you need 3, you have time with their time to care more than one species. So okay, if I put cows and chicken, my employer costs go lower in both lines. So there's how I started. And 4 years ago, I left my past professional life, and I am working only with my own farm. So I'm an ex-veterinary.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Luis. We have a few questions from the audience, and we have 15 minutes left, so I would love to dive into them. And I saw Howard already said he wants to answer one of them, which was around the status of subsidies and incentives that's helping you in the transition towards regenerative agriculture and expanding also your acreage. Howard, your thoughts?
Yeah, in the meantime, I already answered that one I was figuring out how it works. So I answered that one in writing. But there's a different one that I saw Anton already shortly answer, but I think that's very interesting. If I can take the liberty of going into
Go for it.
The question is the way the audience asks it's an anonymous question. The question is, it looks like a logical choice to move from conventional practices towards regenerative practices, the way we're talking about it. So why isn't this happening at a larger scale yet? And I found this a very crucial question, actually, to answer. And it's something that I'm now also running into. I studied at the university, I studied organic agriculture, and in theory, it all looks like no-brainers. Now that's Anton's part of the answer too. Like you said, easy in pencil, hard in practice. And I'm also finding out, I would actually like to sow, I would like to have a mixed crop. I would like to sow beans and wheat in one field. But to do that, and I want to drive once on my field. So to do that, I actually need a machine that can sow at different depth because the beans go deeper than the wheat. So I need a machine to do that. The machine costs 45,000 euros. If there's no other farmer in my area who wants to do this, with the scale that I have, I can't actually afford that machine and still make a profit. Then when I harvest it with a combine harvester altogether. Then I need another machine to actually sort out the beans and the wheat because I'm selling them separately as well. So you need to start forming new cooperatives or things like that. And that what it comes down to is it's a locked-in system that we're in. So the legislation that we already talked about is not set up for regenerative agriculture. So it makes it hard for farmers to actually apply practices that they want to do. Then if we look at the value chain is a conventional value chain. So am I going to get an extra price if I'm actually applying all these practices? Or is it actually still easier as a farmer to just buy artificial fertilizer, which is ridiculously cheap, and keep on doing it in the same way that I was already doing it, knowing that the big factories in Holland is like potatoes, it's sugar beets, it's onions. That's the cash crops in our area. And they have big contracts, and they're getting tons off their land, and they're earning good money with it because the factories are paying for it, and they know that they can actually sell these products. They don't have to go and look for a new market. They don't have to look at how can they add value. They don't have to look at, okay, do we need to set up our own processing facilities? So that's value chain. Then there's labor. In Holland, labor, well, in Western Europe, labor is really expensive, and the more complex you make a system, the more labor you need. So the more expensive it becomes to do it. So then you need to, again, look into your value chain and see, okay, can I start selling directly to my consumer? But that's a huge step for many farmers that are actually just used to working in the way they're working. And then finally, which was already part of my story, is mechanization. Mechanization is hugely expensive. Anton already also mentioned it. And farmers have a system at this moment, and they've invested up to millions in the mechanization they have now. So to change towards a different type of mechanization that you need for regenerative practice, I mean, they have these spraying carts that are behind the tractor. They are even self-driving that can spray 60 meters wide with crop protection, or well, just call it poison. A cart like that costs more than 100,000 euros. If you want to start taking that away and going into mechanical weeding, you've got amazing mechanical weeding systems nowadays, but you need to change your whole farming system. You have to work at different widths. You have to change your mechanization, invest hundreds of thousands. So there's a huge big barrier there as well. So in short, legislation, value chain, labor, mechanization, these are all things that keep us in a locked-in system.
Wow, that was a great answer, Howard. I can only sign most of what Howard, or all of what Howard has been saying from our experience with farmers. I mean, we need a systemic change, right? I mean, we need change on all different areas, and that also has to include all areas of the value chain, from government over food corporates. Processing facilities is another major issue that I also know for a lot of farmers. So yeah, there's a lot of work still to do, but there is also a lot of movement happening, and I think that brings me to one thing that I see as very exciting. That in the past, farming has not really received the recognition that it should, right? And it has not been that a lot of young people have aspired to become farmers. I do see with the whole regenerative agriculture movement and movies like Kiss the Ground, etc., more and more young people wanting to move into farming. And that brings me to one question from the audience that I really like this. What's your advice to future farmers? What would be your advice to young people that are saying, hey, this sounds exciting. I want to become a regenerative farmer. So maybe we can hear from Anton and Luis on that one. Whoever wants to go first.
Anton.
Yeah. You know, I have one answer for that. Recently, we hear a lot of talks about agricultural business, but I can confirm that to have success in that business, you have to think about it that it is not business, it's your life. So it's the only way to have success here. That's your life. You can simply can't live without it. So answer yourself that question. Is it your business or is it your life?
Luis, anything to add?
In my case, I am very early in my professional farmer life. Okay, so I have only 5 years with poultry, but I have two major questions. One very objective is that the market want this kind of product. Okay, the problem that we know as farmers, the problem that all the regenerative world that we have is that we are not able nowadays to produce the huge amount of regenerative product that the market wants. Okay, one of the why that happened, because also the knowledge is in a very early stage. I have seen some comments saying the knowledge they are from 20 years old, not actually. And believe me, because I have studied a lot, for example, in my case, to produce professionally pastured poultry. Okay, for example, in the case of the pastured poultry, most of the farmers are from the US, and they are only seasonal producers. They only produce pastured poultry in the spring and summer. But our market here and in the big cities, they have not very, very big frozen machine to keep the chicken during the rest of the year. So they want chicken during the whole year. So how we are going to produce a poultry chicken during the winter? Not many explain that. And also, what is the best way to feed the animal 100% with grass, don't using cereals during the whole year? So my opinion is that the knowledge also is in the very early stage. If we speak about professional knowledge, okay, there is experience, there is that, but no, there is not many manuals. Okay, if you want to, how many feed is going to eat a chicken during the whole life? Not many explain that. I believe, I don't know if you remember that one of the experience, we have to design a specific feed for our chicken, because no one feed program for the nutritionist put the fever in the incomes for the chicken. No one chicken in any farm eat fever. So so there is all of that different things is very complicated. So the two questions is, the first one is the market want this kind of product. So if you look for in the farms production, the whole farm production, most of the producers say, oh, you know, the price is very low, we have a lot of we don't win a lot of money. No, with regenerative farming you can win a bit money. Okay, so the demand is very high, we can receive more. This is with the meat, okay, I don't know exactly because I know agriculture. But the second point of view is, okay, I listened to a politician a few years ago say, if you really want to change something, please don't wait until the politician do that. Okay, if you want to change something, try to do first you. So I spent with my 3 small children. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep poultry for the next year, because it's a very hard work. Everything is very expensive, so it is hard, but it's good. Okay, we tried. If we cannot finish, okay, we tried it, and then maybe another future farmer. But it's a good idea for us and for the rest of the world. So why don't we? I think it's the correct line. Okay, so maybe it's that most a philosophical aspect or view, but I think it's the market one that, and if it's good for everyone, why don't we try that?
For sure. And I mean, from my side, I can just say that I've been to more than 100 farms, and this has been over the last 4 years. And most of these farmers have not received a lot of support from the outside, but they all have been among the most happiest people that I know, because they're doing what they're loving, right? And I think Anton said it right. Like, if you're getting into regenerative agriculture, this will become your life, but it's also one of the most beautiful things that you can do in life. And I'm not a farmer yet. I'm definitely an aspiring farmer, and I just planted my first 700 trees last weekend, and that was already an incredible experience. So I think seeing your own plants grow and seeing your own farm thrive and your ecosystem thrive is the feeling that very little things in life compare to, I would say. So we're almost at the end already. I see one very interesting question from Sajeev from the FAIR Initiative, which published an amazing report on greenwashing in regenerative agriculture, by the way, which I can highly recommend to read. And he's asking, who are your typical end buyers? And what do you think are the incentives for downstream buyers for your regenerative produce? Is it a low carbon product, which can reduce their scope 3 emissions? Or would a regenerative label help? And what do you think are the main drivers driving the desire for regenerative produce that Luis was also referring to? So whoever wants of you, final answer to the last question.
Okay, in my case, the buyer are the final buyer also. Also, we are working with some restaurant and shop, but the percent of the population that is aware about how we care the animal as society and how we feed our animal is increasing. So in our case, speaking with a farmer, I'm not very worried about my personal market. Okay, so I don't know, I have no idea about the big market, so agricultural market, but with meat, yes, there is the demand is increasing incredible high year by year.
Amazing. Maybe Howard, we still have 1 minute left. Maybe you want to jump in there and share a little bit how you are selling as well.
I would like to answer the part about the certification, because it's like quite a complex question, but this is also just this component is quite complex already, and there are very much, yeah, very many different opinions about this, because if we look at organic, that's certified by law in Europe, so you know it means something. If someone is organically certified, you know they are not doing certain practices. But we also see that organic in the last 50 years has not been able to actually take the market and grow into its potential. And it's become a checklist sometimes, rather than really a holistic movement, combination of practices. And there's a big fear that if we start certifying regenerative, that we go the same way. And it also means that it becomes less accessible to conventional farmers who would like to go stepwise on the way towards regenerative. And at the moment, I think next week there's going to be the first founding conference of the European Association for Regenerative Agriculture, founded by farmers trying to take power of regenerative agriculture as a term and as a practice, as a movement, and defining it so that Coca-Cola doesn't do it for us. They're already trying. My thoughts on this is I really like the participatory guarantee systems. And if regenerative often focuses on local, and in the Netherlands, there are already a few examples of value chains in a region organizing themselves around a PGS, that they say, okay, if you know me, we have customers who come to our farm, they know us and they know our practices and they know what we're doing here. And often they're even working on the farm with us. And if I tell them, okay, I know a good shop and I know a good producer and I know another good farmer, they'll believe this. And these farmers, they also know a few, and we organize ourselves with clear rules on how we organize our own local PGS. But with that, we kind of guarantee to the people who know us, these guys are also good guys. They're also regenerative. And in that sense, I can see that there might be a possibility of avoiding greenwashing, but also avoiding the pitfall of organic certification.
Amazing. I think that's a perfect closing statement. I could not agree more. I want to thank you three so much for sharing your experiences, your knowledge, and your passion with all of us. I loved the conversation. I found it super fascinating, and I hope everybody else that was listening too. And handing it over to Kieran for the last final words. Thank you all.
Thanks, Philippe. Thanks, Howard, Jose, and Anton. That was a great discussion, and thanks for sharing so much. As you can tell from the webinar chat here, people have been so engaged and so appreciative of all you've shared. Just for anyone still on the call, I will upload a recording of this webinar to the Connecting Nature website, probably on Friday this week. In that, I will include a link to the FAIR report and a couple of other documents that were referenced. And if Philippe or one of the guys were kind enough to share the EA or A information with me, I'll include a link to that. Of course, we'll link out to Jose's farm as well, so people can buy their chickens if they want to. I'm always fascinated at how my supermarket chicken in Aldi costs me €5 when it probably should be paying 15 or 20 euro. Somebody like you, Jose. But look, finally, just before I hang up, there's one thing I did want to share. We have a colleague of mine who is currently doing a little bit of research and is looking to interview any regenerative farmers out there. If I can share my screen here, if people can see that. So Horizon Nua, who manage the platform, the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform, are doing some research through 2 European projects, one called Invest for Nature and another one, NBS EduWorld. And in order to represent the voices of farmers in an upcoming European Commission report that we're working on, we'd love to speak directly with some other regenerative farmers from across Europe. So I have included Oisin's email address there. He's the guy who is taking care of this research. But what I'll do is, when we share the article and the recording of this webinar on the website. I'll include these details there if anyone would be kind enough to share another hour. But other than that, thank you again, everybody, for attending. We had a great turnout today. Philippe, as always, has fascinating guests that he's brought along and really addressed some real issues that are evident for the farmers here today. And thanks again to Anton, Howard, and Jose. Cheers, everybody. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon. Happy farming, guys.
Thanks.
Ciao.
Thanks for giving us a platform, Philip.
Always a pleasure.
Welcome, Howard. Yeah.
Coming for a chicken.